Hi, Bogo says hi too. Today, Bogo and I are going to discuss some of the issues that autistics, furries, kin have, geeks of different fandoms have that I don't think are good, and I think that that kind of thing needs to change within my communities. However, ABA is not the way to change it. So, if in my last video I seemed a little grossed out when I talked about showering, I will say that I am very clean. I shower. Of course, there are days when I don't shower. There are days in that of everybody. But on those days, they're rare, and when they do happen, I'm already not that gross. I'm still clean. So, that is, sometimes it's a problem with, within my communities that, some people don't shower, they don't use deodorant, and they end up, gross and stinky. And I have smelled that at cons before, and it is gross. So, for that, I will say that if you're a fursuiter and you have been out fursuiting all day and you're really sweaty and stinky and you're dripping with sweat and you stink a lot, wash your fursuit. So many fursuiters they don't want to wash their fursuit, so they choose not to wash it. That could eventually ruin your fursuit, and even then, it's just gross if you don't. So, for anyone within my communities who is lazy and doesn't want to shower or deodorize, I do think you should. However, ABA and being forced to via ABA and being told you're behaving badly and you have to behave better in order to get clean is not the way to do it. ABA is not the answer to anything. So, another thing is that everyone within my communities, should, in addition to most of the time showering and, staying clean, always use deodorant every day. So, another issue that is a problem within some of my communities is that some people within my communities don't go outside enough, they don't exercise enough, they overeat, and they will sometimes spend the whole day playing video games or at the computer while not going out. So to give a more, balanced view on these issues, I will just say that I hate screen-free week. Screen-free week, in which you vow for a whole week to not use any electronic devices or have any screen time, that is super politically correct and stupid because I don't even think kids have to follow it. I don't think screen time should necessarily be limited even for children. However, I do tend to spend a lot more time outdoors, and I spend a lot of time on the internet, of course, but I really don't play video games that much. This is not because it's wrong to play video games, even a lot of the time. It's just my preference. The reason I don't care for video games too much, the only time I'll play them is if I'm in an arcade, and I do plan sometime on playing Pokemon Go, but I don't really feel like it right now because I am too tied up with other stuff that I'm doing to catch Pokemon right now. So, let me see. The main reason I don't really care for most video games is because they tend to directly put you in virtual reality, and with TV and movies and stuff, I can just passively watch the stuff and, apply it to my own definition of reality. But with video games, it can be hard to do that because you are interacting, with this alternate reality. And given the history I've had of, species identity issues and, feeling upset for, my take on reality and my species affiliation and I not being understood by society, I prefer not to role play at all, because when I'm pretending to do something that I'm not actually doing that's technically fantasy as opposed to my alternate view of reality, it brings back those times when adults would say, you can pretend to do this, but you can't actually do it. There are some video games that are not so much that way, and sometimes I'll play those. However, I do not have any home console. So, however, if somebody wants to play video games, that's fine. I do think there's a time and place for everything. So, for I do think that everyone should have a lot of exercise and spend more time outdoors. Um, I do think that children are being preached to too much to, you know, not have less screen time. I think kids deserve more time outdoors and more time on the screen. But for adults within my communities, um, you are free to have as much screen time as you want per day. I don't have an issue with several hours of screen time. What I do have an issue with is enough screen time per day to distract you from actually having a life, um, outside your own house, and also, if you never spend time out in nature, if you never exercise because you're too busy playing video games or watching TV or on the computer, I think that's bad. So again, however, ABA is not the answer to any of that. So I don't think that other Aspies have to necessarily have an outward social life, because that has been forced on a lot of us by neurotypicals way too often. I myself love having an outward social life with fellow like-minded people in my different communities, not so much with neurotypicals who aren't like-minded. Those I prefer to avoid completely. Luckily, I am, often in contact with like-minded people, so it's not so much an issue for me. But ABA should never tell any person within my community that they have to make lots of friends who aren't like-minded. If I didn't live, close to a lot of like-minded people, I would be more of a loner. So I can totally understand where they're coming from, the Aspies, that is, and the people within my communities, not the ABA people. So yeah. So if somebody within my different communities wants to be alone, and even if they live close to their like-minded friends but would still rather be alone, that's their choice, and their choice needs to be respected, and they should not be forced to change by ABA. So, however, I do feel that exercise is essential for good health. So I exercise for 2 or more hours every day, and I am doing my best to eat better. So I'm starting to feel like I'm losing weight. I think I've lost some weight, but my goal is to take all the 60 pounds off. And for somebody who doesn't exercise and spends their whole time on the screen, that's not a good idea. It's just not good for you. And if you spend time on screen but you also go outdoors, then that's cool. You don't have to limit your screen time as long as you exercise and also go outdoors. But for somebody who doesn't go outdoors in nature at all, who's never been to the woods, who has just spent their whole life on screen, not a good idea. But again, to fix any of the problems that people in my community face, there are many other ways to do it besides ABA. So the last problem I will talk about would be one that I myself have been struggling with, which is overeating and gaining weight from that. So there was a time, believe it or not, where I was seriously obese. I feel so much better, in taking and, keeping the weight off, and I still have a lot of weight I need to lose, but I'm working on losing it. Every time I lose more weight, I feel better. But for a long time, I couldn't even, remember how it felt to be seriously obese. But a few days ago, I suddenly had a memory of how it felt. It was yucky. It felt yucky and nasty to be carrying that much extra body fat. So, for any person in my community who is seriously overweight, I'm saying this because I've dealt with it in the past, and I'm dealing with a little bit of it still. It is good to keep a good diet and to exercise a lot. So, if you find 2 hours or more too hard, it would be in the beginning if you haven't exercised at all, or only exercised a minimal amount. So you don't technically have to exercise that much every day. But for somebody who's just starting to exercise, the nutritionists say, and doctors say that you only need to exercise a half an hour per day to get the benefits, and exercise a half hour every day, and slowly you will take off the weight. So, and then sometimes if you wanted to, move it up to an hour or more. So, I'd say with exercise, start at half an hour every day. But if you exercise for just a half an hour every day, you'll be grateful for it in the long run. So as for good diet, I have talked about this before. I cook, and I like otherkin furry aspie cuisine. Um, so, uh, but one of the major issues I have, which I feel in many ways is tied to ABA and to behavior-based thinking of promoting healthy diet, is the way vegans and vegetarians have infiltrated nutrition, and that has somewhat been reflected by flexitarians who are like, you can eat meat but eat less of it. So now, I am not the one to talk about this. I actually won't really give any dietary recommendations because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. For that, ask an expert in that. But if that said expert, is really pro eating less meat, eating an almost completely vegetarian diet, you might want to do some more looking around until you find a professional expert who is not so rigid about that, because those do exist. And I myself wouldn't find just a tiny bit of meat with lots and lots of plants and vegetable protein to be really appealing. But there are ways to eat healthy that are not like that. Again, I am not going to give any information on that because I'm not a professional. You should look around and find a professional who recommends a more of a meat-based diet, but one that's still healthy. I'm sure you can find them. So, for all these issues, these problems that my different communities have, so one thing that the ABA people might say that's totally false is to blame most of the issues on my different communities, and that is completely overlooking the fact that every community has problems, has, flaws that need to be worked out. So, there are so many alternatives to ABA. I'm starting to talk to Ari Neiman and find out and do work with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, which is like the first network and the first autistic advocate ever to fight against ABA and to, promote alternatives. That's what I strongly believe in. So I'll be doing work with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, ASAN, soon. So yeah. So for all fellow people in my communities, fellow otherkin, therians, furries, geeks of all kinds, autistics, that's my 2 cents for advice on remedying the problems that our communities face in a non-ABA way. Shalom. Bogo says shalom too. Peace and good health to all.